Andre Côté asked,
allez-vous nous donner le rapport?
and they say no.
Et je sais pas ce qui m'a pris, franchement, je comprends pas comment j'ai fait ça. Puis je me suis levée, puis je me suis approchée, je l'ai regardé droit dans les yeux, j'ai pris le rapport. Et j'ai donné le rapport à Ghislaine et je l'ai lancé à Vilma, qui l'a envoyé derrière elle.
And they flip it back through the audience.
And it went out the back door.
Et le lendemain, on avait toute une copie sur notre bureau.
And she effectively saved shelters in Ontario.
That scene just gives me chills. It's an amazing film, incredible documentary. It's called The Smallest Steps, and I'm joined by its director, Nicole Bedford. Nicole, welcome. Great to have you there.
Thanks so much for having me.
Nicole, tell us about that scene, because it doesn't describe exactly what happened in that moment, because it was a pretty incredible moment that we just witnessed there.
Yeah, it was, and I won't give away the full story, but basically a report about what Ontario was going to do about violence against women in the 90s was leaked. So it was very inside job kind of thing.
Right.
And when they went to this meeting, they wanted to see the report and were being denied that. And it was just a fluke. It was one moment in a series of moments that could have been going in any other direction, but because they took the report and didn't give it back, suddenly the Ontario government had to turn around and go, well, actually, that's not what we're planning to do about violence against women, because some of the things in the report was they were going to have women go to a shelter for 24 hours and then go back and have their neighbors look after them, which is kind of crazy if you think about the nature of violence against women. And so, it's really good that report was never implemented.
And it's amazing how this film is really intergenerational, right? You've seen, young people, I believe 2 law students that study at the University of Ottawa, and then the activists before them. And I imagine that's where this idea of the smallest steps comes from, is that it seems to be incredibly small steps, and that's been so frustrating for activists over the years when it comes to violence against women.
Small steps is part of any kind of campaign to create change, right? It's the small steps that advance us forward. In the documentary, we followed 2 law students, as you discussed, and we also followed 2 survivors of violence, and together they're all taking their first steps, learning about violence against women. And then we also talked to the veteran activists about what they did at the start. And so some of their first steps were, making up a list of board of directors in order to get funding and things like that. If you read about the way that shelters came to be, it was women who decided that they were just going to open these shelters before there were any kind of approval processes or anything, because there was a need in the community. That was a small step they took. The women in the film are taking their own small steps, and that's where the title kind of comes from.
Right.
And it also is about demystifying and making it less scary to get involved in violence against women, because it's a really serious topic that people think, oh, that's a big deal and there's a lot on the line about it. Yeah, there is, but you only have to take a small step, and each step will take you forward in your learning and in your ability to create change.
How and why did you want to get involved?
So that was
Why are you laughing like that, Nicole?
I'm laughing because I didn't actually get involved from some sense of justice or anything. I was thinking about starting a business in film. I'd worked in academia beforehand, and I decided to volunteer for a researcher. Leanne Burns was working with a research project, and she was collecting the stories of the veteran activists, many of whom are in our film. And so I decided to volunteer to film this for my portfolio. Very selfish. And then when I was listening to the stories that this activist was talking about, I was realizing that a lot of the change she was talking about was in my lifetime or just shortly before I was born. Right. And I didn't know any of this, and yet I had called myself a feminist. So I kind of thought these stories needed to be shared. And then Leanne offhandedly made a remark about wanting to turn these things into a documentary. And of course I thought, oh, here's a great opportunity. So that's how this started.
Yeah, and something that's really cool is really, all this archival footage that you put together. I know that, this is a film is a big team, and, you used graphics, and just explain how you were able to use some of those components and bring them to life on screen.
Well, I took a deep dive into the women's archives at University of Ottawa and other archives like the Rise Up Feminist Archive, and we found a lot of imagery about actions and people who were part of the anti-violence movement and the feminist movement, the women's movement in greater context. And what we did was we tried our best to bring these things to life. So we did some animation of those images. One of my favorite graphics in the film is the 1990s collage montage, because a graphic designer built a whole website from the 90s, you know, with those animated backgrounds and everything. Oh, it brought me right back to high school days. And we filmed it on a CRT monitor. So it took 2 weeks to build that one graphic, and it lasts for something like maybe 30 seconds, but it was so worth it. So that's how we brought the archives to life.
Pretty special time coming up too, right? The 16 days of activism. For those that aren't familiar, first of all, maybe you just expand on that and what it means, but also a great time to arrange for a screening of such an important film.
Yes, thanks for promoting that. So tomorrow is November 25th. It's the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and it kicks off 16 Days of Activism, which is a campaign that has been run by the UN for a long time now. And this theme this year is Unite, which I think is really appropriate, because one of the things we talk about in the film, or show in the film, is that it's really about a movement. You're not an individual, you're part of a movement. And so uniting under this theme of 16 Days of Activism to end gender-based violence is a great way to think about your involvement. And there's lots of ways you can get involved. You can volunteer for an organization. You can donate on Giving Tuesday, or any other day of 16 Days of Activism. You can screen our film. You can just commit to learning about violence against women in your community and how it's impacting people around you. Because I guarantee you know somebody, a woman who has experienced violence against women, whether in your family or in your colleagues group or in your friends group. And so just learning about it and believing the people who are telling you those stories, that's an act you can take that makes a big difference.
Very quickly, do you touch on the role that men can and should be playing in this film?
I don't think that the message is gender exclusive.
Okay.
Like, I'm talking to everybody when I say get involved.
Right.
You have a role to play. We have a role to play. And you can learn about the issue and then learn how to get involved and make an impact. The one thing I think with men that they hear a lot is, you know, don't speak over women. But the big thing is really we're working together as a team in order to end violence against women. And so respect your fellow human being, be in dialogue with them. Don't just come in and assume that you know all the answers, because none of us do know all the answers.
That's a perfect statement to end this on. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We'll be right back after this.